This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. My email address is jason@sportspectrum.com. A couple of people have been emailing me and asking me, why do you give your email address out? Honestly, it's because I want to hear what you guys think of the show. Maybe you have some comments on today's interview with Phillips. Maybe you have a guest idea for a future show. Maybe you just want to say hello. And you've been enjoying this podcast that we've been putting out for a long time now, for a couple years. That's why I give it out, and I would love to have you contact me directly. So it's jason@sportspectrum.com. Comes right to me. Love to hear from you. jason@sportspectrum.com. We are presented today by IJM, the International Justice Mission. You can reach them at ijm.org/TF, a great way to join a great organization, the International Justice Mission, helping to protect more than 150 million people around the world from violence and oppression. Join the fight. IJM.org/TF is the website. IJM.org/TF. We're also presented today by Compassion International. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world, and they are amazing partners with Sports Spectrum. And the work that they do, releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name, is so important. And here's a chance for you to team up with Compassion and pro athletes for children in poverty right now by going to the website compassion.com/teamup. Compassion.com/teamup. Very excited to welcome Phillips, Tampa Bay Buccaneers reporter, to Sports Spectrum. Casey has a very cool job as the team reporter for the Buccaneers. And when you go to Buccaneers.com, any of the stories that are there, any of the videos, she does it all. She does social media, she writes stories, she does vlogs, she takes videos, she does interviews. In fact, we talk about some of those interviews on the show today with specifically the brand new quarterback, Tom Brady, and the tight end, Rob Gronkowski. Casey has had a really good and fun broadcasting journey with stops with the Dallas Mavericks, with KMOU in Missouri. She actually had a job with Walt Disney World and working with Disney. She was with the Washington Wizards, the St. Louis Rams, and now working with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And she's really found her niche as a reporter. She's been there since 2015. As I mentioned, on-camera talent for all Buccaneer TV shows, radio shows, features, interviews for Buccaneers.com. She also does in-stadium hosting and is an event MC. She's got a fun journey of football, a fun journey of broadcasting, and a great story of coming to faith as well. Take a listen to Phillips, Tampa Bay Buccaneers reporter, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Casey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. We're excited because you're somebody I've wanted to talk to for a while anyways, and then this NFL offseason happens. Obviously, COVID and the pandemic and 2020 has just been crazy, but it's also been a pretty crazy offseason for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. And they look like a much different team than they looked like at the end of last year. Before we talk about specific changes, meeting Mr. Brady and everybody else that's come aboard, why don't you share with us a little bit about what your job entails? As it's a unique job because you work for the team, but you're also a reporter, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I work for the team as compared to a newspaper or television outlet, the way those traditional jobs would be. And I love it because it lets me do so many different things. That I have a couple TV shows, I have a couple radio shows, I do live shows for our website and social media. I have my own vlog and other content that's designed for more of our social media type stuff. And I do the in-game stuff for the video boards during the games. I mean, it just lets me do so many different things, which is a blast. And I also love that my big job is really helping people get to know the players. That yes, I talk X's and O's on the radio shows and television shows and stuff like that, but it's really designed to show the humanity behind the guys, let everybody know their personalities, that because I work for the team, I am around so much more than the average reporter. I'm on the team plane, I'm in the team hotel, I'm in the hallways at the facility. I just get to know them, their families on such a different level, and that's my favorite part.
And yet 2020, you haven't been able to get to know as much as you would like because we've all had to social distance. What's that been like, adjusting to this sort of new I hope it's not a new normal, but we'll just say the now normal that we're going through as far as your job?
Yeah, it has been brutal. I'm very thankful I was already with the team and had already built, all the relationships. It would be really challenging to be trying to start my job right now. I don't know how I would do that. But it's basically just been doing things over FaceTime and Zoom as much as I can. I even tried to FaceTime with all of our new rookies and new additions, not to record for an interview, but just so I could get to know them a little bit, because I knew I'd miss out on all those things in the normal off season where I learn about their personalities and who they are. But yeah, it's been incredibly difficult. I do a vlog that, normally is very much about the behind the scenes and me being somewhere that other people aren't. A lot of times it's me kind of like walking and talking with a player, shooting selfie style. And now I just did my first one and I'm like yelling at players from like 20 feet away. I was like, hey, I'm vlogging. And one guy was like, what? I'm like, yeah, this is great. This is going to work out well. So it's been very different, very weird. Everything has been figuring out what my job in stadium is going to look like, how we still do, all sorts of coverage with the guys and show their personalities via Zoom. So I've definitely had to get a lot more creative. But thankfully, because I already had a lot of those relationships, we've been able to figure out ways to make it work.
So, of course, Mr. Brady's arrived. Gronk's there now, and a whole new dynamic with Tampa Bay, and all eyes are on the Buccaneers as opposed to maybe just Tampa Bay or some fans scattered around the country. This is all eyes keeping itself on Tampa Bay with regards to the NFL. So take me back to March, I think it was. I think we were in this pandemic, if I'm not mistaken, and we were just kind of wondering, sports has been put on hold, and then Tom Brady drops the bombshell that he's coming to Tampa. What was your initial reaction when you saw that Brady was coming to Tampa?
Yeah, it was crazy because we were already in the pandemic. We were already working from home. So I was in my apartment and watching it on, ESPN, NFL Network, like everybody else, and kind of texting with some of my coworkers, like, is this happening? Because even all of us, and I even was texting with the girl who has my job for the Chargers, and when they were talking about, it'll be the Chargers or the Bucks, and she and I were like, we're in the Brady sweepstakes. Like, it was just so funny to be doing all this from home and just texting people and watching it on TV, and that was just so different than how it would be in any other year. But and I remember, of course, my first thought was, of course this happens during a pandemic. Like, of course that happens. Right. But it just, it was still so exciting. It did not take away from any of the excitement. That is for sure. It was frustrating from a job standpoint, but as a now, Bucks fan, because of my job, it was incredibly exciting.
And then Gronk follows suit, and I got to spend some time with Gronk at ESPN when I was there, just a couple days when he would come up and hang out with us in Bristol. And I actually included him in my new book on leadership, because people were like, why would you include Rob Gronkowski in a book on leadership? I said, because Rob Gronkowski knew how to laugh and just have fun. And that was the 25-year-old Gronk. I'm sure at 31, he's still having fun, but maybe a little bit more veteran-like. But what's been your interactions with him? I know you've interviewed him a few times, and just kind of some takeaways on talking to Gronk.
Yeah, it sounds like 31-year-old is similar to 25-year-old. He is hilarious. He is everything that I thought he would be and more. And yeah, I mean, even just my first interview, I wanted to make sure that I tailor my interviews to the personality of the guys that I'm talking to. And so I knew I could have fun with Gronk, and I knew he would want that. And, said something to him about, at the time, he was still the, WWE 24/7 champ or whatever it was. And I made some statement about, hey, like, are we going to have to post some security around Raymond James Stadium? Because, from what I hear, they can come take it from you anytime, anywhere. Like, this could happen in the end zone for all we know. And he was like, lit up, was all excited. He's like, oh, we got to get security in there. We got to have people buy the pirate ship. Like, he just went off on, I felt like I got to watch a WWE promo being shot. And he could have just been like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, he didn't have to, but you could tell he was so excited to have this fun way to interact in the interview. And that's what I think I love about him and what his teammates love about him. And I've seen it at practice. I've heard from guys that it's like this around the facility. You're right. He looks for ways to have fun. And I think that's something we all should aspire to do, especially in these days where it's so much easier to focus on the negative, that if instead you're looking for ways to enjoy life and enjoy your job, I think it shifts the whole mindset for yourself and everyone around you.
I know that you've gotten to interview Tom Brady as well, and you interviewed him recently. I'm sure you'll have more opportunities to talk to him throughout the season, but were you a little nervous that first time you got to interview Brady? I know for me, I've gotten to be around a lot of big names in my time too, but it's Tom Brady. Like, that's a little bit higher of stature. It's like interviewing Jordan or something, right? I might be a little bit nervous there.
Yeah, it's funny. I always say that there's really only been one person I was ever a little nervous to interview. And for me, it was Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
That I grew up such a huge Magic fan. I was a point guard and I was a taller point guard as a kid. And I just, everything about him, I idealized. And and the fact that he is so much bigger even than just basketball and what a cultural icon in so many ways. And that was the only time I was a little bit nervous, and especially because there was no like warning. He just like showed up at a Wizards game when I worked there, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to interview him," and I was like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, I think that essentially now I really wasn't nervous to interview Brady. I was just nervous about all the technology working because now we're having to do it over Zoom. I was just so worried that knowing, his time is pretty precious, like getting an interview with him is, a very important thing to us, and not knowing if something went wrong, would we be able to do it again? And so really all I was thinking about was the Zoom and the recording and the technology and that side of it. So it was probably good that it didn't even give me a chance to think about the gravity of interviewing Tom Brady. It was just, please let this work.
Well, it was good. I watched it, and I'm sure it's going to be even better as you get to maybe pull back the reins a little bit on the Zooms and get to do interviews in person, hopefully down the road. Casey Phillips is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. So let's learn about you. Let's learn about your journey. Take us back, growing up, the role sports played in your life. And you mentioned basketball and being a point guard growing up. Take us back and tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I was always really into sports. I played basketball, softball, volleyball, track, tennis, all of these at some point. Loved being an athlete. And I knew at 12 that I wanted to do broadcasting, but it was a little bit more of a news mindset in my mind. I grew up watching the Today Show, and, my dad had said something about, I feel like you could be like Katie Couric someday. And I was like, yeah, that would be cool. And then my, middle school had a TV show when we were in like 6th grade, reporting on breaking news, like the lunch menu, very serious reporting. I think I really deserved some incredible awards there. And it was funny though, they did, they actually voted, who would be best anchor out of everybody. And I got it. And when you're 12 and you get voted best anything, you're like, well, I will do this forever now.
Right.
This is what I will do. And then my high school ended up having another TV program and a broadcast class that we could have. And my teacher said, I let one student interview for an internship every year. And I'm going to let you be the student this year, because I know this is actually what you want to do for a living. She said, you're not going to get it. You're a high school 17-year-old going against college graduates and college seniors who actually know what they're doing. But it's just so that when you actually interview down the road, it won't be your first time. Get those jitters out, see what it's like. And I'm like, okay, cool. So she says, I'm going to let you interview for the Dallas Mavericks and for Fox Sports Southwest. And I was like, why have I not thought about sports? It was like this weird light bulb moment. And I started thinking, if you make it in news, you're like standing in the middle of the Afghanistan war. But if you make it in sports, you're at the Super Bowl. And suddenly I was like, that sounds better. That sounds much better and much more in line with what I have been doing my whole life of sports. So I went to both those interviews and I ended up getting both of them. Nice. Which was the moment I knew this is what God wanted me to do, because if that is not a story of it being not about me at all, I'm a 17-year-old kid who, I didn't know what I was doing, and got to do both of those internships when I was the summer before my senior year of high school, went back and forth between both of them, even on some of the same days. And from then on out, I mean, you make contacts, you meet people, and I almost didn't have to interview really again. And from 17 to 21, I got to interview with the Dallas, the Mavericks, and 3 different summers with Fox Sports Southwest, 2 summers with CBS in Dallas, 2 with the Cowboys. I mean, it was just incredible, the opportunities I ended up getting. And then I went to Mizzou for both my undergrad and my master's, worked at the NBC station there, because that's the beauty of Mizzou is it's not like a campus TV station. You're actually thrown into the fire working for NBC, which is very entertaining for a lot of the people in Middle Missouri. They get to watch all of us crash and burn a few times when we're in school. Sure. So yeah, that's kind of how my path and the way that I got there.
That's a great path. I love those stories because we all have our journeys and we all have had moments that, we can point to. Those sort of pivot moments that we had to take and try, and God opens up doors and we're like, okay, that was a moment that allowed me to go to this next. So I want to talk about some of those moments because I know you've had them, even ones that took you to Tampa. But where's faith in all this? I want to learn about your faith journey as well. You mentioned God kind of having that plan for you at 17 to end up with the Mavericks, but where's that faith journey? Is that something that took shape for you early on?
Yeah, I tend to say I became a Christian at 15. I grew up in the church, grew up going to Sunday school and all those things. I was an acolyte. I was, all that stuff, but I didn't really get it per se. Like I would have said all the right things and I got baptized at 12 and I would have said, yeah, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. But I didn't get it really. It wasn't in my heart until about 15. I got suckered into going to this youth group thing that someone just told me we were going to a barbecue and we showed up and it was like a youth service. And I was a little upset. I was very excited about barbecue. And instead it was a youth service. And I got there and I had never heard contemporary Christian music in my life, that I grew up at a church that did all the hymns and the robes and the pews. And I was like, what is happening? I saw all these people raising their hands in worship and their eyes closed. And I was like, oh, this is so weird. But I knew all these people from school. So I was like, okay, I know they're not insane. So why would people that I know are not crazy be doing something that seems very crazy? And I just started trying to listen to the words and look at the music, look at the words, look at them. And all of a sudden it hit me, this idea of like, it was the song I Could Sing of Your Love Forever. And this idea that there would be that much love involved and it was personal and for me. And it clicked. That was it. That was the moment. And I've never gone back from it. It was, I think, because I was old enough at that point that it really was truly my decision. There was never any second guessing that. And then my career, honestly, is where I have seen God at work more than almost anything. Like if people ask my testimony, it tends to be, I tell them the story of my job and career. And, from those first internships I got to then right as I was about to graduate from Mizzou, with my master's, I've done 1,000 internships at this point. I'm finally about to get a real person job and I'm so excited. And a couple months before I graduate, I blow my knee out. And I mean, like just destroy my knee. And now I physically can't do all these jobs I'm been starting to apply for. I can't be carrying my camera and gear and be, around shooting. Like it's not possible. So I'm like, oh, I'm salty with God. Like we are having some chats. They were very one-sided. It felt like I was frustrated. I was like, God, you opened all these doors for me. You made it so clear. And now I'm finally about to do this thing you've been preparing me to do. And this happens. Like, how could you let this happen? And, he didn't say anything back at the time, which, delightfully frustrating as well.
Sure.
And one of my professors said, there's this internship at Disney. It's a little bit of broadcast, but it's also social media, PR, marketing, some other things. I think it would be a good way for you to have kind of more of a normal desk job, still stay a little bit in broadcasting, just have some experience. And then once you're healed and healthy, go for the more true broadcast job. And I said, okay, but I was not happy because I thought if you're not in broadcast for any amount of time, you feel like that's it. You're done, like you're toast. That I'd done all these internships. I was going to do this job that was called PR. Even though it had a little broadcast, it was PR. And I thought, that's it. It's going to send me down this PR route. I'm never going to actually get to do the broadcasting. This sucks. So I got there. I'm doing the job, which I loved, by the way. I loved working at Disney. It was incredible. And then I see that in that time, couple teams create their own jobs as team reporters. That didn't exist before. And I see, one pop up on a job site to work for the Washington Wizards, getting to just cover NBA basketball. And again, I know now we're so used to the specialization of all these websites and things where people can cover a niche thing. That just didn't exist really yet. You got a job as a local sports reporter, and then you try to just kind of move up to a bigger market and maybe to a regional or national, but that was your only route. Yeah. And I thought this would be incredible. So I applied. I found out I was one of 300 that applied, and wow. I got it. And I remember asking them, not like, why did you pick me out of 300 people? And they said, well, everyone had broadcast experience, but you were the only one that also had PR, social media, and marketing from Disney. And I swear to you, I heard God go, mm-hmm. Like, that was how I heard God. And I just immediately was like, oh my gosh, God, I'm so sorry. Like everything made sense. That this thing that I had thought was going to ruin my whole career is actually what set me up in this trajectory. And I now know that working for a team has just fit me and my personality and what I love about broadcast so well. And it has been the defining moment that is how I view everything with my faith now, of whenever things don't seem to be going how I would have them do, or I'm questioning the plans, or I'm questioning any of that, the timing, how things are going. I just think back to that, and that the thing I thought that was going to ruin everything is actually what set me up for the rest of my career.
That's a great story. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. By the way, those comp tickets were gold at Disney, weren't they? I mean, I worked for Disney for 17 years, and that Silver Pass and those comps were gold. Let's just say that.
Oh, yeah. It was to get to go to Disney for free whenever I wanted. And I lived in Celebration, that's basically practically on Disney property. So yeah, my friends and I'd be a Thursday evening and be like, hey, what do y'all want to do? I'm like, hey, let's go get dinner at Epcot and then watch the fireworks. Like, that is the most spoiled life to get to do that. It was incredible. Like, there was no boring night because there would always be some show or some restaurant or something you could go do. And I would have never realized how incredibly fun it was as an adult to get to go to Disney as often as you wanted.
All right. So I wasn't planning on this, but a little Disney rapid fire. So your favorite park, your favorite ride, your favorite maybe restaurant or food that you had. Let's start with favorite park.
Wow. Okay. Favorite park is probably Hollywood Studios. I love Star Wars stuff.
Yes.
And
come on, Casey, here we go.
Oh, yeah. Huge nerd. I'm into Star Wars, superheroes, all of it. Just love giant nerd. It's fine. I've accepted it.
That's good.
I would say Tower of Terror is it's a classic. It's great. And riding it with people who've never ridden it before will never get old. And watching, grown men just be absolutely terrified. I mean, it's just great. Like, yeah, there's just nothing to not like about that. So yeah, I think that's my favorite park and ride, but the Magic Kingdom fireworks, nothing compares to that in the Castle Show. That is forever going to be like, that gets me a little, like, it gets a little dusty for me whenever I'm watching those. I'm like, oh man. Favorite restaurant is probably I think it's called the California Grill. I think either that or right. Narcoossee's. California Grill is the top of Contemporary because you can actually see the fireworks from there, and they pipe in the music on this like balcony patio outside where you can watch it. And and then same thing with Narcoossee's. It's over by the Grand Floridian, has a view out over the lake and the castle, and you can see the fireworks from there. So those are probably my favorite restaurants.
Nice. I thought you were going to say, because mine is just the turkey leg at Epcot over at the US. I'm like, just give me a giant turkey leg and let me munch on it for a half hour.
1000%. Yeah, I have definitely eaten my way around the world at Epcot a few different times.
No doubt. We'll get back to our conversation with Casey Phillips in just a little bit, but want to tell you some more about our friends at IJM, the International Justice Mission. And right now, violence is a threat around the world to those who are poor, especially during COVID-19. It's been as much a part of daily life as hunger, disease, or homelessness, and it's often overlooked, but not by IJM. They believe every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. We believe that as well, of course. And by partnering with local authorities to rescue victims of violence, they bring criminals to justice, restoring survivors, and strengthening justice systems. IJM is helping to protect more than 150 million people around the world from violence and oppression. But they cannot do this work alone. That's why I'm reaching out to you to consider joining them in becoming a Freedom Partner. Freedom Partners are some of IJM's most loyal partners in the work of justice. Their support of $24 or more each month helps survivors of slavery and violence from the moment they're rescued until they are fully restored. It may not seem like a lot to give, but it truly is life-changing. So I'm encouraging you, join me. Becoming a Freedom Partner makes a huge difference in the world. Visit the website, ijm.org/TF, ijm.org/TF, and become a Freedom Partner today. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And right now, COVID-19 has left nearly 70,000 children without a Compassion sponsorship. That is the capacity of an average NFL stadium. And as the world is in the grips of the pandemic, it has led to more sickness. Parents aren't working. Food is scarce. Our frontline church partners with Compassion around the world are courageously delivering essential items to desperate children and families, often doing this door to door. So what Compassion has done is teamed up with some of their pro athlete friends to respond to this challenge. With your help, they're hoping to fill the stadium with urgent support for a stadium's worth of children in crisis. Here's how you can help. Teaming up with pro athletes and Compassion, you can donate and help these children through the critical next 12 months. Every donation helps fill a seat toward a year of needed funding. You can join the team right now by going to the website, compassion.com/teamup. Your donation will go such a long way in saving these children from poverty. Compassion.com/teamup and help release a child from poverty today. Let's get back to our conversation with Casey Phillips, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. So tell us the moment where the pivot happens, the opportunity, the door opens, whatever it is, to come to Tampa. Because I remember people ask me all the time, like, how do you get your job at ESPN? And I'm like, there's so much to that. You know, there's a lot of different breaks that had to happen, different people you get to meet, things that happen that way. For you, walk us through a little bit, because you worked with the Rams before you were in Tampa, right?
Right. So again, these are more of the just continuing on and God just opening doors for me and shoving me through them. I mean, with the Wizards, I had applied online, didn't know a soul, just blind online application, which I hope this gives some encouragement to people that think that when they submit all those, that they just go into a trash can somewhere, no one ever sees them. Like, it can happen, it can work. Yeah. So then I actually did the same thing with the Rams, that it was the same website, the same everything. I just blind online application, didn't know anybody there, and got the job with the Rams. And then my boss there, a guy named Brian Killingsworth, who now is with the Vegas Knights, he and I hit it off really well. And especially because he was also a fellow believer. And so he had, told me about the church that he and his family went to and set me up there. So, we got, to be friends while we were working there. And we actually came to play the Buccaneers my one season at the Rams. And we're walking around the stadium before the game to see it. And I told him how I wanted to see the pirate ship and I wanted to go on that. So we had walked over there, and he talked about how he was from Tampa. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And, when I worked at Disney, I had just said, I want to live in Florida. I hate being cold. And I loved the idea of being close to Disney still. And I had just, once I lived there, I had said, okay, I'm going to find a way back to Florida, back to where I can go to Disney. And, I went to the Wizards and then the Rams, and I was like, I am going the wrong direction here. I am not getting closer. And he said he was from Tampa. And I just made a joke. I said, hey, well, if you ever decide to work at home again, like if you ever decide to move home, just take me with you. And we laughed about it. I mean, I had only worked at the Rams at this point for like 3 or 4 months. And, I had no plans on leaving. And I loved working for the Rams. They were amazing. They were a great organization. I wasn't job hunting. It was just a offhand comment to him about how I liked Florida. And probably, 5 months later, somewhere around there, all of a sudden he just calls me and he's like, so were you serious about the Tampa thing? And I was like, maybe. And he goes, well, I just got a job with the Buccaneers. Do you want to go? I was like, sure. Yeah. Okay. It was so crazy, just this offhand comment. And so, yeah, he came down to the Bucs and brought me with him. And again, it was every job I've had, I've been the first person really to have it. The Wizards, the Rams, and the Bucs didn't have this team reporter role yet. And to get to, again, to me, I think this is a really dramatic example, but like the parting of the Red Sea of like when you don't think there's a way, and like literally these jobs have been created. Like I get to do something for the first time and make it how I want it to be and make it my own. It's pretty cool.
So staying connected to the Lord in the midst of the job that you have, obviously during the season, it's a very demanding job. Sundays are for football, obviously, and it's hard to do the church thing, or maybe it's not, depending on what your story is. But walk us through how you kind of stay connected to God. What's some daily rhythms and routines that you have, and then living that faith out. Obviously, you're not hired to be a Christian. You're hired to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneers reporter, but a Christian is who you are. It's such an important part of you. So take us through kind of what that looks like right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the mornings trying to have some sort of regular, quiet time, of course, like carving out that time. And because I think the mornings are the only time I know nothing's going to come up. Really, sports can pop up all the time later in the day and in the evening, and you can end up working a lot later than you thought. So I try to just know first thing in the morning, carve that time out. And yeah, I don't get to go to church from, August to January at all. And it was tough because especially in Tampa, I got really involved in my church very quickly. And it was hard to not have that continual rhythm where in the off season, I'd be really plugged in and serving. I did, the video announcements for them a lot. I helped launch the young adult program here. I helped launch small groups here because it was a brand new church. And so helping it grow. And I just got so involved in so many different aspects of it. And then I would just fall off the face of the earth for, 5 or 6 months. And my friends would always joke like, oh, well, we're not going to see Casey for a while. Like, it became this joke that I was a seasonal, churchgoer there and would come back in. So it was definitely means that like, I couldn't rely on anyone else to be helping me with my faith, that it had to be my own diligent thing that I did. And I basically decided I would always try to lead a small group, even during football season, which just about murdered me multiple times. But the first season I was down here, someone told me that one of our pastors was like, you really should lead a small group. You'd be good at it. And I was like, man, I just don't, the season's about to start. I don't know how that's going to go. And I heard God so clearly say, you make time for what's important.
Mm.
And it was just this thought of like, yeah, this one night a week, you know, what else am I just saying because I want one night off, that I'm wanting one night that I can sit there and watch Netflix? Like, yeah, that would be great. But is that productive at all? No. And if they told me I needed to work another night at work, would I make it happen? Of course I would. So I just decided that was going to be my thing that I made happen. And so in my 5 years here, I've led probably 12 different small groups, just trying to have that be right. I was stayed in community and I felt like I was still making my faith a priority. I've gotten to preach at my friend's church a couple times. And whenever I travel with the team, or I just during the season when it is insane and busy, I just download a whole bunch of sermon podcasts. And that's what I listen to on the bus or on the plane before the game. I listen to worship music. And I always try to have a moment when I walk out on the field before every game to like, just stop and thank God of like, man, look at where I am. And just have those moments with him of, look at what you've done. Like, this isn't me. I didn't do this. And I know it's a Sunday morning and I wish I could, you know, be at church and, you know, and doing that, but I can still have moments there that, you know, it's not like God's only in church. He's anywhere. He can be on the bus. He can be on the plane. He can be on the field. And also I love that our quarterbacks coach here, Clyde Christensen, is a strong believer, and he lets me go to chapel with the team on the road, which is really great. So it's usually a whole bunch of players and coaches and me. And it's funny, the people that will be delivering the chapel, a lot of times they'll be like, all right, gentlemen and lady, like you can see all of a sudden they realize I'm back there and they're like, oh, and lady. So they've done a great job of including me on that. So yeah, those are a bunch of the things that I've tried to do. And it's tough. It takes a lot of time, but it's so worth it, because I think going through a whole season without making God a priority would be infinitely worse and harder. So it is worth the time sacrifice.
Is there a better guy in the NFL than Clyde Christensen? Because I'm not sure there is. I've not to know Clyde. We had him on the podcast and I know him a little bit. He might be the nicest guy in the league. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he is wonderful. He is that nice all the time. And he's so encouraging. I know when I got to preach at my friend's church the first time, he watched it and was all encouraging and telling me what a great job I had done. And yeah, I mean, you can tell the players love him. The coaches love him. He just has a heart of gold.
That's awesome. All right. Last couple questions here with Casey Phillips here on Sports Spectrum. So tell us a story of a memorable moment as a sports reporter. It could be one that you want to forget, but you always look back at. It could be just this amazing, holy cow, look where I am, look what I'm getting to do moment. Give us a story of a memorable moment, Casey Phillips, as a sports reporter.
Wow. Okay. So this is tough. I feel like there's probably two of them that are kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, but
we'll take two. That's fine.
Okay. So so one of them, when I first started with the Wizards, like we're talking, it is my first couple weeks. They're like, okay, there's only, I started in like March, I think. So there was only a couple weeks of the regular season left. They weren't making the playoffs. So my boss said, okay, we're going to have you travel next season. So I'm going to send you on one of these last couple of road trips here just to get a feel for it, so you're ready for next season. So I haven't even really met most of the team yet. I don't know what I'm doing. And we go to Miami, and we had just signed Nene to play for us. And for people who don't know who he is, big old Brazilian guy. He's wonderful. Love him. And he took the whole team to dinner because he was new and wanted to make a good impression, and invited me, which I thought was incredibly sweet. So again, it's just players and then like me and maybe a couple PR people. And because he's Brazilian, we go to one of those Brazilian steakhouses, and he is like a legend in Brazil. So everybody that worked at that place was so excited. And we got this private room, and they brought all this stuff out that wasn't what they would normally serve people, like the more Brazilian delicacies, shall we say. So, they bring it around on a big old long stick, and there's just pieces of meat, and you're sort of like, okay, I don't know what this is, but sure.
I've been, and they're amazing.
It's amazing, right? It's the dream. So they bring me one, and I see that the pieces of meat on it are tiny. They're like the size of a quarter. I'm like, What is this? And I asked the guy, and I say, what is this? And he goes, oh, it's chicken heart. And I said, oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate it. And from the other end of the table where Nene was sitting, I guess he hears this. And he all of a sudden is like, you say no? And I'm like, oh, no. and I don't know Nene yet. And like, now I know him well enough to know that like, he's a sweetheart, goofball guy. But in the time when a 6'10" man is like yelling at you, and he's also the one paying for your meal, there is fear. There is genuine fear there.
You better
and
eat
now,
that.
yeah. And now the whole table's looking at me. All these players, all these people that I am now about to try to, I need a good relationship with, are all looking at me. He's like, you say no, that is Brazilian delicacy. That is delicacy. You eat chicken heart. And I'm like, I'm going to eat a chicken heart. Okay. And I ate it and it was terrible. It was the worst. It was this rubbery, horrific. And I'm like looking at him like, like trying to like, and he kind of like takes that at face value and goes back to eating. Everybody stops looking at me except maybe like a couple players sitting right around me. And they look up and they're like, it's terrible, isn't it? And I said, yeah. And I like spit it out really like, trying to be all discreet about it. So yeah, that was definitely a moment of terror. And then the other one was that I was before one of the Wizards games, me and the team DJ, he was the one that would play all the music in the stadium before the game. He heard I'd played basketball and he challenged me to a game of horse. Now, granted, I am in a dress and heels, not ideal horse playing attire. So I was just like, all right, whatever. So I kicked off the heels and just in my dress and bare feet, we go out there and we start playing. And it starts getting intense. Like we are going back and forth and like it's going down to the wire. And I am super focused on this. And like when we started playing, there was not a soul in the arena yet. It was like several hours before the game. Like maybe there are a couple marketing people putting t-shirts on seats or something, but it was like empty. I don't even notice that this has changed while we're playing. We finally get to the end and I win. And I turn around and I see that Dwayne Wade and Ray Allen had been warming up on the other end and they had stopped warming up to just watch us. And that they apparently like my boss was watching. He later told me, he was like, yeah, they were super impressed. And they were smiling and laughing and they kind of like applauded you when you won. And I hadn't even realized I was so like zoned and focused on this game of horse. So that was definitely a moment for me of like, I had idolized those two players so much. And to know that they had gotten to watch me win a game of horse in a dress and bare feet on an NBA court. I was like, yep, this is it. This is as good as it gets.
Just drop the mic there and walk out.
That's it. I'm good. Yeah.
That's the end of it. Speaking of the end, as we wind down here, this is a question, the last question, and we ask it to all of our guests here, Casey. What are you learning from God today? So 2020 has just been wacky and crazy and sad and challenging. So many words that we can use to describe it. But what's God been teaching you right now in the midst of all that's been going on? What are you learning from the Lord?
Wow. So many things. I think that I've really been focusing on the greatest commandment a lot, that it's something that I think we take for granted and we think, yeah, so love people, sure. But really the idea of loving your neighbor and your enemy, that like, there's no exceptions. Yeah. And whether that is someone that you disagree with politically, people of different races than you, I really have started thinking about the way Jesus interacted with people. And Jesus talked to women when that wasn't really appropriate in that culture. He talked to Samaritan people when that was incredibly, Jewish people and Samaritans hated each other and there was the race issues there. He ate with quote unquote sinners and, people that were prostitutes and were all these other areas of, so if there are people that you view as sinning worse than you or being worse than you at whatever faith is, or, those heathens, those people that do, I'm not as bad as them. And then even the tax collector idea. So representing the political side of things that you disagree with, the idea that he covers race, gender, different, sinful behaviors, politics, that looking at the fact that Jesus went against all the norms to show that love was always the priority. He was never shaming people. He was always loving people. And even the people that he knew were going to kill him, he was loving towards. He restored the ear of the soldier that was about to arrest him to kill him. Mm-hmm. If Jesus can manage that kind of love, what that means for the way we should be interacting with people on social media, in person, over Zoom, in whatever capacity, that there is not a person you get to choose to not love. It's just not an option. And in 2020, it has felt harder to love, but that's exactly the moment when we're called to do it.
That's well said. She is Casey Phillips, Tampa Bay Buccaneers reporter. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to hopefully coming to Tampa Super Bowl week if everything stays the way it's been in the past and getting to say hello in person. But thanks for joining us here. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
And many thanks to Casey Phillips for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. She's awesome. She's got a great story, fun personality, loves the Lord. You can give her a follow on Twitter at Casey Reporting. Casey Reporting. She's also on Instagram at Bucks Reporter. And she does great work. And she's got a team that a lot of eyeballs are going to be watching this year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, and a slew of talented players on the Buccaneers. We'll have to see how the season plays out, but certainly a lot of eyeballs on Tom Brady and Tampa, and a lot of eyeballs on Casey Phillips. She was great. We appreciate her joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. We also appreciate our sponsors and partners today, the International Justice Mission, IJM, helping to protect over 150 million people around the world from violence and slavery. You can visit and donate at their website, ijm.org/TF. Become a Freedom Partner today. And also thanks to our partners at Compassion International. We love them, releasing children from poverty. Such important work. Check out the website, compassion.com/teamup, to donate and help release a child from poverty today. We also want to direct you to the home base for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. It's sportspectrum.com with daily devotionals, articles, and every single podcast available right there at the website, sportspectrum.com. And lastly, do us a favor, click that subscribe button on whatever app that you listen to this podcast on. That way you never miss an episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. We've had over 500 interviews of the Sports Spectrum podcast, and they're now available on demand for you to listen to at any point, at any time. 3 years worth of content, all available at whatever app that you listen to the Sports Spectrum podcast on. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. My name is Jason Romano. Love you guys. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.